Hi, this is K. William Spencer of Your Thoughts, Your Reality Radio. I just thought I'd come in today just to let you know that this is our second interview with Roger M. Daniel, also known as Jolly Roger, a gentleman that's in the United Kingdom. He is a very happy and very gregarious type of person and personality. He's a retiree, and he has 3 radio programs, and he has created and maintains his own website, which you'll find later on in the broadcast. The real reason I came in here to tell you a little bit about today's show is that on our first recording about a month ago, we had problems with streaming. And today's show, we got through 40 minutes of a clear recording until it seemed to be that the internet was the problem, and it kept cutting off the show. So I edited it as best I could. It's not running for the full hour, but I just wanted to let you know that in advance, that today's recording is wonderful, except for just the ending, which we suffered too many problems with signal quality. In other words, it was cutting us off. It wasn't creating any hissing or any other sounds. But anyway, enjoy this show and have a great day and weekend.
Welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality Radio with your host, K. William Spencer. This program is geared to help you see what thoughts and or beliefs are holding you back from being your best for yourself and those around you. Your life is only as good as your thoughts. For more information, visit our website at www.ytyrradio.tk. That's www.ytyrradio.tk. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality Radio. I am K. William Spencer. Today our guest is Roger M. Daniels, also known as, or a.k.a. Jolly Roger from the United Kingdom. Here is a gentleman that we did an interview with not too awfully long ago, but we did have audio problems, so we're doing the interview over again, but he has some new information he's going to share with us. Roger is a man who is probably not well known here, in the Americas, but he is one of those people that I love to talk with, who shows people about his humble beginnings and how he went from, in his case, as we were talking about it, from someone who was very shy. He was very aware of who he was and didn't like who he was, but he overcame these situations to work in the music business, and now he's supposed to be retired, with 3 radio shows, online publication that he does on the internet, and he interviews the likes of blues greats Candy Stanton and John Lee Hooker. Welcome to our show, Roger, or Jolly Roger.
Thank you, Kirk. Good to speak to you.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you again. Actually, for those who don't know Jolly Roger, once you get to know him, or hopefully you'll hear this in the way he talks and speaks with us, he is one that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say this in a very positive way, hopefully, so I want to make sure you understand that he has an infectious way of growing on you in a good way. He just makes me feel warm and comfortable. He makes me laugh. All those things that makes a true friend, and I like to call him a friend. So, Roger, let's start from, as we say, or as I say, let's do a boomerang effect. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then let's go back and tell people how you went from one situation from childhood and the transition into where you are now.
What I'm doing right now, well, apart from talking with you, I'm editing a radio show which will be going out next week on ABC Radio Aulnus. That show is broadcast on Thursday and again repeated on a Friday. In addition, I've got 2 radio shows a week with Lionheart Radio, also on the internet, lionheartradio.com. That's a Tuesday morning. I've got my Soul Stirrers, which is a mixture of blues, funk, jazz, soul, but all which would fit comfortably into a gospel genre. And then I've got my mainline station, my mainline program that's on a Thursday, that's Jolly Roger's Blue Noon, which again is jazz, blues, soul, funk, but without so much of the gospel element. And in all my shows, I like to feature on interviews. I interview a number of people. You've mentioned a couple, Candy Staten. I'm due to do one on Monday with John Lee Hooker Jr. Now that is a real thrill for me because 50 years ago, exactly 50 years ago, I was in a small club in Southend where his father, John Lee Hooker, was playing. And then in the 60s, I was a roadie for a rhythm and blues band. And I guess I've been involved in music ever since. You mentioned also my online publication. This is something very new, but it's a way of social networking, I guess, just keeping in touch with people, letting them know what I'm doing, who I am, where I am, what I'm up to. But news of the different guests that I've got on my radio show. But the whole thing is, it's contained within an online newspaper of current affairs, sport. It's got YouTube videos. I like to feature top artists in full-length concerts, which is certainly a draw for the newspaper itself. So I guess I'm anything but retired. Unfortunately, I'm retired in as much as I'm not at the moment generating an income. But I get by. I have a small teaching pension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just kind of amazing. It's like, I'm not at that point where I could retire just yet, but someone was asking me several years ago, so what do you plan on doing when you retire? I said, the way that I like to work, I'll probably work until I just drop dead, whatever I'm doing. So
That's very much where I was a year ago because I owned a coffee lounge, a record store, and a bookshop, and I loved nothing more than just to sit in the coffee lounge with customers who became friends and just spend time chatting with them. And they'll ask me, they'll say, Roger, have you got any plans to retire? I'll say, well, let me think about it. What will I do when I retire? I know. I'll listen to great music. I'll chat with friends. I'll drink coffee. Hang on. What am I doing now? Oh, yes. That's exactly what I was doing. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed 3 years ago. I have fibromyalgia, which results in a number of symptoms, but one of which is, believe it or not, chronic fatigue. So it's just too much for me to run my store, hence the retirement.
Yeah. Well, you seem to have overcome even that, at least to a certain degree, and still keeping busy. It may not be earning you money, but you're still enjoying life as much as you can, doing things that you love to do. Which brings us to why you're here. In my show, I make the emphasis on I'm not looking for the famous, as not that I say I wouldn't mind having them on the show, but I'm looking for people who are like you, who have made that step from I wasn't what I am now when I was a child. So let's go back. Let's do that slingshot. Let's go back. Even though I can hear it in your voice, you do have a bit of that Scottish brogue, as we say. We know that you're from London.
Uh-huh.
But occasionally you do roll your R's like the Scottish do, so what can I tell you? Or as I was telling you earlier, when I lived in Alabama for 3 years, when I moved back up north, people says, "Are you from Alabama?" And I would say, "Why would you say a thing like that?" It's just you ended up adapting to the area that you live in for a while. Well, to a certain degree, I've known people
Yeah,
that have.
yeah. Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. I was just going to say that that's certainly the case. I noted particularly with my daughter because a few years back when I was studying to be a teacher, we moved around a lot because I was living in the northeast, and then we went across the country to the west so that I could do my degree, and then we moved from there back to London. And it was interesting to note that Emma picked up, she was very young at the time, and she picked up the accent wherever she was. So she had, if people who are familiar with Newcastle upon Tyne in England will know about the Geordie and the Geordie accent. So she had a Geordie accent. And then we went to Lancaster. And in Lancaster, instead of saying something like shut the gate, they say shut the gate. And she used to use phrases like that. And then we moved to London, and believe it or not, her religious studies teacher wrote the Cockney Bible, and Emma was chosen to read a section of it on air in Australia because of her Cockney accent. So it's just like you're saying about adapting, and it's particularly important for children because the one thing you don't want to be at school is different, because if you're different, then everybody is on top of you. And
Yeah, that's true. But I learned to deal with that at an earlier age, but that's a conversation for another time. So let's get back to this real quick. I don't know why I'm saying real quick, but at any rate, tell us about your early childhood. Those moments where you were talking about your parents and well, how they, well, their lifestyle, what they ended up having as their childhood, which they passed on to you because they didn't. Well, I'm going to assume they didn't know any better.
well, I'd say they're the product of their environment. And my mother was a lovely person, but she had suffered a lifetime of rejection in that when she was very young, her mother died. She was shunted around from relative to relative, knowing that nobody really wanted her. Her father remarried, and she went to live with her father and the new bride, who said to her on the first day, said, I married your father, but you're not part of the deal. Uh, right. And yeah, I think my mother was, 7 at the time, and she just grew up with that rejection. She married at the earliest opportunity, met my father and married him. Uh, I think quite understandably, my mother didn't really have any time for church, and my grandparents accused my mother of just taking my father away from the church, and I think as a punishment for her sin, she faced a lot of rejection from them. I remember going with my parents to visit my grandparents on one occasion, and I particularly noted the way that they seemed to fawn over my father, but just blocked her out completely. And my mother developed a very tough exterior, but underneath she was just so vulnerable. I remember in the 60s when women first started to wear trouser suits, and my father and I had always been used to my mother in a dress. And there was one occasion that my mum and dad were going out, and my mother appeared at the top of the stairs. My father and I were at the bottom. She appeared in this trouser suit and said, "What do you think?" and we were just like totally gobsmacked because it was just so different. And for a moment, we were stunned, and she took that stunned silence as rejection, and she rushed into the bedroom in floods of tears. Apart from that one occasion, though, I I just knew this tough exterior until she was. Well, I discovered what she was really like when she was on her deathbed and very weak and just exposing the real vulnerable person. And I said, "Oh, Mum, if only you'd shown me this years ago."
So sad.
Yeah, so because of that, I guess I wasn't aware of a lot of love. As I say, my parents are a product of their environment, but I grew up feeling unloved, and because of that, I had emotional and behavioural difficulties, and I was every teacher's worst nightmare. I remember in junior school, I guess I would do anything for attention, firing catapults at the teacher. But what I do remember is every day I was sent to see the head teacher. I think they assumed that it was a punishment for me, but in fact, as far as I was concerned, it was a positive thing. I was being recognised, so the more I was sent to the head teacher, the more I would play up for that reward.
Let me interrupt you just for a moment. You said you were throwing catapults. Now, in my mind, and I'm going to assume that many people, at least in the Americas, when they hear catapults, they're thinking about this wooden thing that's throwing great big boulders.
No, just an elastic band, with paper pellets. I'm sure kids all over the world do it.
Oh, yeah. That we understand. We just didn't, like I said, it was just a picture of a great big wooden thing sitting by your desk and throwing boulders up at the teacher. So I'm sorry. Just had to clarify that one. Yeah, okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Where do you want me to go from here? I think I finished that chain.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to this time when you were in your early teens. I won't bother to venture the age at this point. And you were working, as you say, in the cinema.
Oh, yes. Right. Working in the cinema, the ABC cinema in Southend. And what I do remember of that time was, I was a trainee projectionist. And as a trainee projectionist, I was a general dog's body. And one of my jobs was to get down on my hands and knees and to scrub the floor and then to wipe it dry with a dishcloth. And one of the other lads thought it was funny, I guess. He came up and picked up the dishcloth and wiped it in my face. And just something snapped inside of me. This lad I mentioned had gone into the staff room to make himself a cup of tea. So I followed him, and I got myself a mug, and I put in a bit of milk and topped it up with the tea, stirred in some sugar, and tipped it over his head. I was just, don't always think of the consequences.
Yeah, well, there's a point where you just have to, I suppose, stand up for yourself, and how you do it depends on, as you're saying, your own upbringing. So, at least it wasn't a violent, let's go hit him in the face kind of a retribution.
I don't know. It's scalding hot tea. I'm not sure which is worse, hot tea or a punch face. But
I'll take the hot tea.
Anyway, I jacked in my job at the cinema. And, just shortly before that, though, I remember I was cycling home one night and I could hear this incredible driving rhythm and wailing harmonica. And I was just sold on this music. It was wonderful. I was cycling my bike and I thought, I've just got to find the source of this sound. So I did. And there was a blues rock band playing in an outside gig. And so I stopped and watched and got talking with them afterwards, and they mentioned that their manager had a club in Southend. So I thought, right, I'll become a member of the club. And so I did that. And it was a few days later that this episode at the cinema, and I was just fed up of the way I was treated. I jacked in my job, and I was sitting on the steps leading down to the pier at Southend. Oh, who should come past but the band, the Cups and Rubbers. Hello, Roger, what are you doing here? Oh, I jacked in my job, didn't I? Well, why don't you come and join us as a roadie? Wow, what an opportunity. So I did, and I went home late that night, and my mother was always a light sleeper, so she woke when I opened the door. That you, Roger? Yes. So I went up the stairs, and she said, come in. So I went in, and parents were there. And they said, well, why are you so late? Oh, I said, I've jacked in my job at the cinema. Don't worry, though. I've got another job as a roadie for a rhythm and blues band. And I don't think they'd slept too well that night.
But little did they know that was the beginning of a new life that you're still involved in some form or fashion. Oh, yeah. I should have wrote down my next question because I just lost it. I get involved. Oh, that's what it was. I get involved in listening to you, and I just go into a total abandon. It's just like, okay, just talk. Go, Roger. There's the question I wanted to ask is similar to the first one that I asked on the other show. Was in England, the blues took hold in England much more than it did in any place else in Europe. Most of Europe, the American influence came from rock and roll, and they don't understand that rock and roll is a combination, a springboard effect from blues and from jazz. So tell me, how did blues, because Eric Clapton and several, was it Steve Winwood and a few others, well, several others actually, took up from blues and made it their own and became very successful at it. How did and why did blues take such hold in the United Kingdom?
Why did it? That's a really interesting question. See, I guess it was the abandonment, because remember, this is not that long after the Second World War, and probably in common with the USA. I don't know what things were like for you in the USA, but in this country, I mean, we hadn't been that long out of rationing and all the rest, and life had been really, really hard. And the going back even further, you got the Victorian values, and there was a continuation for some in this kind of thinking. And I think that, well, it was the Rolling Stones who, there were two members of the Alex's Corner. They used to play with Alex's Corner, and Alex's Corner was going to do a separate gig in somewhere else in London, and so he asked two members of his band if they would stay behind and do their regular residency. So they said yes, and they got a couple of mates to join them. And it just happened that these two musicians had heard some of the southern blues music from the USA and had really dug it, were really into this, and so they started performing that. And I guess they just made it their own, and there was a wild abandonment, as I say, to the music, and that just grabbed the soul of the nation. And I think it all sprung from that.
So now we have was it? Who are some of those greats? Steve Winwood.
Yeah, I think he arrived on the scene a little later. Eric Clapton was certainly there right at the beginning because, John Mayall. Uh, John Mayall he was around the same time as Alex's Corner, as well was Norman Biko, who's another friend of mine on Facebook. And yeah, John Mayall, Eric Clapton started playing with John Mayall.
Oh yeah, I remember that much. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, Steve Winwood, I just kind of remember him because, well, between him and Eric Clapton, I love their voices and, of course, their style. So I really grabbed a hold of them and just kind of like, I want to listen to more of these guys. It was kind of funny how, as we call it, the British invasion happened back in the 60s. And
That was really funny, yeah, because what happened was that you had your Southern blues musicians who over in the USA were thinking, well, there's no money in this, and so they were actually starting to leave the blues behind and get involved in soul music. And as they were moving away from blues, suddenly these blues musicians from the UK, so they were saying, well, why do you guys want to play our music? They couldn't understand it.
because it sounds good.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like Count Basie. Someone asked him, I believe it was Count Basie. Someone asked him, what do you consider good music? He says, if it sounds good, it's good music. So, yeah, I tend to go that way with myself. It's just, if you like it, it's good. That doesn't mean I'll like it, but that's okay. It's a matter of personal choice.
That's funny, actually, because that reminds me that I was auditioned years ago for The Weakest Link. You know that program?
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah.
program. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was I was auditioned for the first ever Weakest Link, so nobody had heard of it, and we were told that this was going to be the next big thing on TV, and it was like, oh yeah, well yeah, maybe. Anyway, one of the other would-be contestants, said, "Tell me, are these questions going to be easy or hard?" And the answer was, "Well, there's no such a thing as an easy or a hard question. There are questions you know the answer to, no, they're easy. And there are questions you don't, and they're hard. And it's the same with good. I mean, good music, bad music. I guess it's in the ear of the listener."
Oh, yeah, definitely. When I was a kid, uh, we were. I grew up in a fundamentalist household. We were always taught rock and roll music was the music of the devil. And I don't know if you had these radios. We had them in the States. They didn't have batteries. They didn't have really a power source. It just had an alligator clip, and you clipped it onto a piece of metal, and the radio would work. It was just an AM radio with a earpiece. It didn't have a speaker.
Uh-huh.
And I used to listen to this, and my classmates would ask, "What are you listening to?" And I would let them listen. "You're listening to rock and roll music? You're going to hell." Well, it's funny how you go from one genre to another. I went from rock and roll to the 60s, what they called the psychedelic rock, and I like that one. And then they had some of was rock folk music. I liked some of that. And as I got older, I went into, I'm going to skip a few, but went into the 70s and went into disco, so I liked some of that. That lasted a little too short for me, but that's the way, fads go. And then I started going into, jazz. I was always listening to jazz, but jazz was making its own change at that time, so I started into jazz. And I've been kind of stuck with that ever since. So the if you will, the particular I'll say, different level of jazz that I like listening to now is basically lounge, chill, and smooth. It's just, I like that kind of a thing. That's my thing. But
Uh-huh.
in other words, what I'm saying is we don't normally just stay with. Now, there's some people I know that do stay with particular genre. That's all they want to listen to, and they've listened to that since they were a kid. But for me, it's been an evolution of where do I go from here to there. And my tastes vary, but if you know how my tastes have always been, it's still somewhat similar. Just it changed a little bit with age.
It's really funny, I was just thinking about this recently, that in the States, jazz grew out of blues, and yet in this country, the UK, it's entirely the other way on, because in the late 50s, early 60s, there are a lot of trad jazz bands, and they started playing blues. You listen to, I don't know if you know the name Manfred Mann.
Oh, sure I do.
Yeah, a British blues band. And yet you listen to their early stuff, and it is you can tell the jazz influence in it. Yeah.
Okay, let me take a short commercial break here, and we'll be right back. So stay tuned. We're having an interview with Jolly Roger, also his real name, Roger M. Daniel. Stay tuned.
I love what Maya Angelou had to say about the power of the spoken words. She said, I quote, "Words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with deeper meaning," end quote. And that is the reason I made the decision to put my words into an audiobook. So please check out my spoken words in my new audiobook, Your Life, Your Way, the 10 must-have goals to improve your life. It's now available. You can either go to my website at www.coachingbyria.com and purchase it there. You can also download the book from iTunes by going to the link I provided in the show page, or simply go to the iTunes stores and put my name in the search, Coach Ria Wilkie, and you will be able to download the audiobook from there. And I do thank you all for doing so. And if you like to write a review, please do so. And I'm always grateful to be in service. Thank you.
Hi, this is K. William Spencer of Your Thoughts, Your Reality Radio. Come and join us every Tuesday and Thursday for enlightening, humorous, and intriguing conversations with my guest, or just a monologue of thoughts that I share, all to help you look at life and your choices differently. For more information, go to ytyrradio.tk. That's ytyrradio.tk.
And welcome back. Our guest today is Roger M. Daniel, better known as Jolly Roger from the United Kingdom, who has 3 radio shows on UK radios, and some of them are on internet. Tell us your link, or give us the link to your internet broadcast, if you will.
Right, okay. On a Tuesday at 9 o'clock British Standard Time, lionheartradio.com, there's Soul Stirrers. That's a mixture of jazz, blues, soul, and funk music, that all of which happily fits into a gospel genre. Then on a Thursday, the same station, but this is at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. British Standard Time, there's Jolly Roger's Blue Noon, which again is a mixture of jazz, blues, soul, and funk, but without so much of the gospel element. And then on a Thursday, I'm not sure at the time, you have to check online, I think it's 1 o'clock, It's a new program for me. That on abcradio.co.uk, I have a show, Jolly Rogers, Blues and Views, and that's repeated on a Friday. And I think, as I say, all my programs, I love to feature interviews with top musicians from around the world, a lot of them from the USA and Canada. I've recently interviewed Albert Castiglia, who played with Junior Wells. Also, Buddy Whittington, who spent 15 years with John Mayall's Blues Breakers. Candy Staton, now she goes way, way back to the time that Aretha Franklin's father, the Reverend Franklin, was, I believe he was the pastor of her church, and recognized that she had lovely voice, so she started singing in church, and then she started touring with Aretha Franklin. There was Aretha Franklin, Mahalia Jackson, the Blind Boys of Alabama, Sam Cooke. They all used to go out, tour together in America. So she grew up very much in a soul and blues music. But then in the 70s, and you were saying about the disco craze, somebody got hold of one of her earlier records and remixed it and put it out as a disco single, and that was Young Hearts Run Free. So that was the start of yet another stage in her career. And she's had, since then, I believe she's had some gospel programs in the USA. She's had a hell of a life. She's successfully battled with both drink and drugs dependency. She's been through 3 abusive marriages. I had a wonderful interview where she was just opening her heart and just sharing for those who are going through similar battles. So if you ever get you do have a chance. You can hear that this Thursday and this Friday on abcradio.co.uk. Then who else? Oh yes, I've got an interview coming up, as I was saying earlier, with John Lee Hooker Jr., which is a real thrill for me, having spoken with his father 50 years ago.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, because I know you were telling me that it was just 50 years ago, just recently, that you met his father.
Yeah, that's right, because I said that I teamed up with the Cops and Robbers, a band that I'd heard playing in Southend, invited to become their roadie, and the band were actually chosen to back John Lee Hooker when he came over to the UK. So I have very good memory of being in a small club in Southend, in a small office, just chewing the cud with them. Yeah, just chatting before. I'm not sure it was before or after he went on to do his set. And also, I believe in that same office there was Donovan, because Donovan was a great friend of the Cops and Robbers. In fact, the Cops and Robbers discovered him, if you like, because they were in Hertfordshire, and they saw a guy by the side of the road with a guitar, and they stopped to give him a lift, and they said, our manager's got a club in Southend, why don't you come and play between sets, which he did. And there was a guy from my school, what was his name, Pete Eden. He signed Donovan, who was the young lad, signed him to a contract, and they released Catch the Wind, which just rocketed to the top of the UK charts, and I understand that he's made something of a name for himself in the States as well.
Oh yeah. I'm humming the song that was very popular with him in the States, and I can't remember the title, unfortunately. But I remember that he didn't have the staying power, but he was there and he did make his, as you could say, his footprint in the concrete, if you will, or I don't want to say sand, but the concrete. He made his point, and every now and then, at least when I was living in the States, you would always find some sort of reference back to Donovan, and it was usually that one song in particular that I was thinking about, and I wish I could think of the title, but who knows.
But of course, in the 60s, he was also very involved with Jerome Byers and the whole peace movement. And I understand that Donovan also, yes, he went across to India with the Beatles when they were on their spiritual quest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that. The beaded hair, the gurus, and yeah. Okay. Let me slingshot again, just a little bit, because remember the show is about how you went from the child. I want to start you at that point where you were sitting on the steps near the pier on South End, and tell us a little bit about your life as a child and how that ended up changing.
How that ended up changing, that's interesting. Yeah, it certainly has. I've certainly come a long way from that very shy, insecure young person. As I say, every teacher's nightmare, but basically inside, just so insecure. But I think it's just, as I was saying earlier to you, none of us have any say in the hand that we're dealt in life. But we do have a say in what we do with the cards, how we play the cards that are in our hand. And I've always been somebody who gets involved in everything and jumps into a situation both feet first and thinks about the consequences later. Yeah, as a result of that, I've had a very long and a very active life. Been a roadie, as you know. I've been a deep sea trawlerman. In fact, it's funny. I could give you a long list of things that I've done, but as my kids used to say to me, Dad, don't tell us what you've done in life. Tell us what you haven't done, because it will be a heck of a lot quicker.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it reminds me of something people used to say to me when they would ask what I've done. As a matter of fact, one job that I had, this was probably 6-7 years ago, guy looked at my resume and he came out as president of a company and he says, I looked over your resume and he goes, what haven't you done? I said, I haven't been a politician, but I'm not going there, so don't worry about it. I got the job, but so yeah, it's one of those things where I told people, especially when I was younger, I would rather sit back when I'm probably too old to do anything and think about my memories, about the things that I have done, and smiled instead of saying, I wish I had done that, but now I can't.
Yeah, I remember when I was at college and our chaplain said, Roger, whatever you do, never ever suffer from the phoners. From the phoners. That's it. I said, phoners, what are they? And he said, well, if only I'd done this, if only I'd done that.
Yeah. There you go.
And you say you'd like to, when you're sufficient age, just sit back. But you cannot, because whatever was inside you driving you on when you were young is still inside you driving you on when you're old. Inside, I'm as young as I've always been. I've got a pretty old decrepit body, but the fella inside this body is still as young as ever.
There you go. Yeah, it kind of goes to that feeling or that expression of you're only as old as you feel. Yeah, body is one thing, but your mind is quite another, which is falls into the title of our show, which is Your Thoughts, Your Reality. So, anyway, please continue on from that transitional stage at 15 to being a roadie, and how those changes, or how, well, those, what do you call it, pivot points in your life.
Continue on. So you want my life story?
Well, yeah, in about 15 minutes.
Okay, right, well, let's have a go. Yes, I was a roadie, and yep, I had a dramatic conversion to Christianity in that there was a girl that I really, really fancied. I bought a couple of theatre tickets in the hope that she'll go along to the theatre with me, and she didn't want to go, so I was stuck with these tickets. So I said to a mate of mine, I said, well, look, I've got this ticket to the theatre.
Hello? Uh-oh. I think we've lost Roger.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com, and you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria.
This is where we started having our major problems with the signal that was coming across. As you'll be able to tell, you can hear both of us clearly. It's just the signal would stop and then start. And I edited out a lot of the dead space that was in between the signal cutouts. So what started out as 11 minutes ended up being 9 minutes, but we also had to come back and do the closing, so we did that. So please pardon the problems that we had. We believe it was signal because we had checked our computers beforehand, and this is the end result. So continue listening. We were at the point where you had 2 tickets to the cinema and you were talking to a friend of yours because a girl that you wanted to invite refused to go.
That's right, yeah. So my mate said, well, yeah, I'll go to the theatre with you if you come to a film with me. So, yeah, that sounded a pretty good deal. I mean, not only did I get to go to the theatre, but I got to see a film as well. What I didn't know was that it was a gospel film, and it was being held in a church hall. And believe me, that was the last place I wanted to be. But I'd struck a bargain with my friend, and don't like to what's the word? Go back on a deal anyway. So I went along, and oh, believe me, there are all these people with hands stuck in the air, waving them around and shouting hallelujah. And I was cringing inside. And anyway, I saw this film, and I responded to a gospel appeal. So I got involved. Well, yeah, I accepted Christ, yeah. And so I was told that now I was a Christian, I could have nothing whatsoever to do with this music scene. I had to leave that behind. Anyway, from there I got involved in the Children of God. There were a large bunch at the time, part of the Jesus movement in the USA. And yeah, they'd come over to the UK. So I lived for a time in a commune with them in Bromley bus station.
In a bus
So
station?
that was quite exciting, actually. Yeah, odd place.
Living in a bus station.
I had a bus.
Oh, you lived on a bus or in a bus?
No, I lived in the bus station, but we used the bus a lot.
Okay, we seem to be having problems with Skype again. Our signal seems to be going in and out. Let's see. Are you still there, Roger? Nope, he's not.
Hello, going to what is it? Do you want to? Yeah.
Well, we only have about maybe 10 more minutes to go, so let's see what we can do in 10 minutes, and if that doesn't work, I'll edit it the best I can.
Yep. Right. So it was a bit. So I went back to Southend, and everything after that seemed pretty quiet. Then I heard that there was this gospel rock singer, Larry Norman, music for independent musicians in the UK. Yeah, the rest is history.
Okay, the last thing I actually heard, and we'll leave this recording to go, was Larry Norman in The Rest is History. So whatever happened in between that, I didn't hear a thing.
Yeah, so I got involved in concert promotion. I did a few concerts, and from there I ended up distributing music for independent artists. I was travelling the length and breadth of the country. Over there in the States, the UK probably doesn't seem that large to you, but believe me, if you live here and you're thumping up and down the motorway, then it seems it's long enough. I spent my time putting music into shops and taking it out 6 months later before it wasn't taking it out 6 months later because it wasn't getting airplay, and I recognised then that the secret to a successful music career was airplay.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple of years ago, visiting a friend, and he was talking about possibly doing an internet radio show. So I asked him for more information, and he put me in touch with Generate Radio, and I joined them as a presenter. I found that I was very popular with my listeners, and it was something that I loved doing. Sadly, Generate Radio folded.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of the year, but I went from there to Lionheart Radio, and now, as you know, I'm with 2 radio stations.
Yes, as you say, it's what drives us as youth continues on until there is no more life. Yes, it's very interesting because, like I said, I enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I enjoy meeting people such as yourself, which I can only say similar to you because we're all unique, and that's the purpose of doing the show, is just to bring up the uniqueness of each individual and just say, hey, take a look at this person's life, and if you think you've had it bad, take a look at what they had to grow through and where they are now. So never give up.
That seems an excellent motto, yes.
Never give up, because there's always the future. We don't know what the future is. It's not set in stone. So if you think... As a matter of fact, I did a show last night with a life coach. And one of the things that we were talking about was just that fact of never give up, because we don't know what the future will be. But as long as you think that the answer is no, as long as you think that life is difficult, as long as you think everything in your life is a negative, that's exactly what you're going to experience. But if you look at life and think about it in the positive and say, I can, I will, and I will find my way, even if that's what you're saying, I will find my way, chances are you will. It's not going to be an easy road. Nobody ever said it was going to be easy. But it's well worth your time if you want a life to be happy and fulfilling. As a matter of fact, before we go,
I believe that there's... sorry.
Go ahead.
I believe that there's a time and season for everything, and all things must pass. Everything changes. So, I mean, I've had, as I say, pretty long and eventful life, and I've had my ups and I've had my downs. But the one thing I've learned is that all things... George Harrison said it, didn't he, in the Bangladesh concert? All things must pass. And that, okay, so things are really tough now. Okay, so 6 months down the line, things could be totally different. Things are really good now. Okay, but 6 months down the line, they might not be so good. All things must pass.
Oh, yeah. Nothing stays the same forever. You and I had this conversation once before talking about the weather. So if you don't like the weather now, just wait 10 minutes. It'll change.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something we used to say up in Chicago. I guess they still say it up there. I know you still say it in the UK. But that's just the way life is. There's always the cycles. Even if nothing else, the cycle of day and night. Even if you live in a desert area, there's still a cycle of day and night. There is still a rainy season to some degree in some places, and other places, whatever. But there's always going to be the change. So thank you, Roger. I'm actually very happy to have you on the show. And you're always welcome to do another show here. We don't have to talk about just the past life and whatnot. You want to do a show on what you're doing right now, we can do that. You're always welcome. I enjoy talking with you, as you well know by this time. And thank you for your words of inspiration. Thank you for sharing your life. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. And anytime you want to do another show with me, just let me know. And we'll do a show. It can be on anything that you want to talk about. Not a problem.
Okay, thank you then, Kirk.
Right. Alrighty, and I'll post your links up on the show, and we'll wish you the best and everything. I know you're editing a show now for a broadcast tomorrow, so let you get back to that. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your inspiration. Have yourself a wonderful week and weekend, my friend.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us this time. I've really enjoyed it. And
Thank you for joining us here on Your Thoughts, Your Reality Radio. Please make a note to join us again on our next broadcast. For more information, visit our website at www.ytyrradio.tk. That's www.ytyrradio.tk. Our theme music is Soul Controlled by B.O. Crew under a Creative Commons License 3.0. See our website for more information.